really need to know about it. And it's something that we haven't touched upon. Um, I don't see my friend, Mr. L, yet, but while we're waiting, Mr. Bill, can you go ahead and give us an update on what's going on in the neighborhood, please, sir?
Yes, ma'am. So for part one crimes for the neighborhood of Hawthorne from July 1st to today's date, there's been one homicide, 0 rapes, 8 robberies, 8 aggravated assaults, 3 burglaries, 4 thefts, 5 auto thefts, 0 arsons for a total of 29 so far for the month of July for part one crimes for Hawthorne.
When you say part one crimes, are you including my neighbor across the alley had his catalytic converter stolen? Does that fall into that, or is that a different kind of crime?
No, that falls into that D. That's going to be classified under theft. So that was one of the thefts that occurred, and it would be classified as a theft from a motor vehicle, but it's still theft. So
Mhm.
that would be one of those.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And so, Bill, can you touch on a little bit about the carjackings and I know people have concerns about the carjackings and the donuts that are being done in the streets.
Yeah, so there's been a huge uptick in the donuts. The hot rodders is basically what they're referred to in the media and for us, and there's been some shootings involved with those. A lot of the carjackings are being done by juveniles, and basically it's not that they want anything for transportation. It's what we're finding is that they're committing the carjackings to use and commit other criminal acts. And so they'll go and do a carjacking and then go to a different location in the north side or throughout the city, actually, and then do a robbery or other crimes. So that's basically what we're dealing with the carjackings. The hot rodders, it's been kind of a nuisance for the first, fifth, and fourth precincts. I was just called to a business down on Wayzata Boulevard in the 3700 block because they used to be staging at the Summit Academy, and the owner there, Mr. King, has been very forthcoming and very workable working with the police to try to prevent that from happening. And so he's provided a lot of video and stuff, so we were able to do that. So then they moved to this other location that I was at, and I was tasked with making recommendations to secure their parking lot to keep them out because they were there last Friday and tore up the parking lot doing donuts and burnouts and disrupting the community over there. And so I was there on Wednesday afternoon making recommendations with the property, and I'm like,
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you underground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with
fireworks
their
and
bigotry?
the individual retaliated by taking out
Free or
Army or
guilty,
weapons,
it's
I believe
gonna
the
get
victim died.
filthy.
That was
Better
it.
believe
So that was with I'll be there this Friday
gonna
doing
get
security
rough.
and
It's
working
gonna
with
be
the general
tough.
manager down
We
there.
all agree. We've had enough.
He's very open to our suggestions, looking for help. So I'll be there next Friday doing a security assessment for the 4th Street Saloon down there with business licensing.
I thought I saw on the news that last night there was a delivery driver who was attacked in Hawthorne. Was that just a crime of opportunity, or is that something we're starting to see more of as well?
I saw that as well, Andrew, and I have not seen that. I haven't looked at it closely enough because I was working on something else this morning, but it was a DoorDash delivery driver, and I have to find that address, but it happened, I believe, in the 3000 block of North 6th Street.
Yes,
so,
I read that as well.
Yeah, and that is, we've had a string, but not recently, but I think back in May or June, we had a few of those where delivery drivers are being robbed in the Cleveland and Fowle neighborhoods and Jordan neighborhoods. So it might be connected to those type of things. Where it's but I know that there was an arrest made in at least one of those robberies where they were robbing delivery drivers. So I'm not sure if that individual could have gotten out or it's just different individuals doing it now too.
Thank you.
You bet.
Do you have anything else for Bill? I see my
Yes.
time is here.
At the risk of sounding a little odd, but I was just wondering, do you all converse or have any relationship with police departments, let's say Chicago and Detroit? Because it is my understanding from being around that a lot of these individuals are coming from other states, and that a lot of the stuff that they're doing is relatively new to Minnesota, because we're more family based, and now all of this stuff is coming into the city, and you're dealing with it as it comes. But I mean, if you could reach out to some of those cities, you might get a idea of, okay, what to look for. So you get a jump start on them so that you know what I'm saying, nip them at the bud instead of waiting until it happens and then it's going on, and then you finally peep it after it didn't happen, you know, for a few times. But if you get a jump start on it, because that's just my understanding. I don't know if the police department works like that, if you converse with other states, but I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, so we do do a lot of intel research with other agencies, and it's not just local, but it could be out of state. Like for instance, we just found out that the hot rodding is basically becoming a problem in Chicago, and we had some intelligence that people from Chicago were going to come up towards the end of the month and have a competition with the hot rodders up here. So we're trying to dedicate some resources to combat that. But the problem is that, like we've said before, when Inspector Adams is very forthcoming and very admitted to this, that we do lack resources, where basically right now all we're doing is responding to 911 calls. So we have to be more creative and more community oriented and work with community partners like A Mother's Love, and we Push for Peace, and some other those community agencies that partner with us and to assist us with some of these things. So we are fully aware of the hot rodding problem that has taken place in Chicago and maybe coming up here, and we're working to try to address that. So yes, we do communicate with other agencies, not just local, but nationwide too.
Great.
I have a question. This is Adway.
Mm-hmm.
So is there an update about what took place in Merwin's parking lot? Because isn't Merwin's is in Hawthorne too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
So is there anything about what happened at Merwin's with the raid the other day?
I'm not aware of a raid that happened recently. I know that we were out there and making some arrests in either the last part of May or June. And I know that
on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up and then get back to you. I know that there was a planned response because it was getting out of control again. I was driving by yesterday, actually. I know they had like a makeshift flea market set up on the sidewalk where they're selling goods out there. And then I know on Wednesday, our community response team was going to do a detail up there. So I haven't got the details on that, but I can look that up for you. And I know that Inspector Adams is trying to get a mobile camera up there too to assist with some of the activities taking place up there.
Anybody have anything else for Bill? Well, I see my buddy Mr. L is here, and are you ready? You need a little bit more time, or you're muted? You're on mute, Al.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Good morning, Diana, and good morning, everybody. Apologies, I'm running from back-to-back meetings.
That's okay.
You think you have more time with Zoom, but it just means you try to do more, and same problems. But glad to be here, and good morning, and just want to notify you that we're streaming not only live through the McFarland Media dashboard, our Facebook page, but we're also streaming through the national network of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. The web page is Black Press USA. And so, you know, the idea is a good idea, and that is that what we're talking about locally here really applies to communities everywhere. Victoria, you hit it on the nail when you raised the question about what's the connection between this community in Chicago and Detroit and Gary, and is there, you know, influence going back one way or the other. So the beauty is that through our sharing in this forum, we're able now to reach audiences in those markets and get feedback from them as well. Diana, let me go ahead and run the agenda as you've got it here, and that is, thank you, Bill. First of all, always good to hear your informative reports. but next to turn to Brother Clarence with Human to talk about and give us an update on the North Side projects around opioids. Brother Clarence Jones, how you doing, man?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you. Nice seeing you
Good
again.
to see you. Saw you yesterday.
Yeah.
Good meeting.
Yeah,
Good meeting
I know,
yesterday.
I know. So thank you, everybody. What I want you to know is that as many of you realize that maybe a year ago we did a survey on the north side around opioids and COVID-19, and we had some great results that helped us to understand what the real situation is, the real issue is. We have been granted another grant, and we will be doing another survey. This one will be a little bit more intensive. I think the last time we had like 14 components. This one will have 42 components, but it will give us a much larger understanding of really what's going on in the community, looking at the various strengths, opportunities that we have in our community, and allowing us to have the information and data that we need in order to make some decisions about how we will handle the whole issue around opioids during COVID-19. The other part that I want to share with you is that we have also been granted from the city of Minneapolis a Narcan education distribution grant that will be also going through the Northside Coalition. And that is something that we'll be working on and that you'll be hearing more about as we go through the summer. In addition to that, we also got an additional grant from the city as a partner with some of the community organizations. And one of the things that you'll be hearing from me soon, Diana and Audway and other community organizations will be coming together to talk about how then do we work together in order to provide information or resources to our community. The other thing that is happening that Human is doing is that we are doing something around strokes. We're trying to figure out what are the issues, what do people in the African American community know about strokes? We're doing that with the University of Minnesota, and so we're looking to do about 60 interviews with people within the community. And anytime we do an interview with people in our community, we also make sure that they are incentivized to make that happen. We want accurate information, and so we want you to know that that is what's going to be happening coming pretty soon. And then we just got an agreement with Apple Tree Dental. They want to do some things around oral health in our community. That's gonna be it. I just want to say this, Mr. Abdi, I am really glad to see you. I'm looking forward to hearing about you. One of the things that happened with us in terms of taking a look at the surveys that we have been doing in the past around COVID-19 and opioids was that there was a huge understanding about the issues that are happening within the Somalian community. And I want you to know that, Hawthorne and the Northside Coalition, we're very concerned, we're very interested, but we also are very committed to working with you and your community around this issue, because if it affects you, it affects us. And so I just want to say that has always been part of our understanding and strategy in terms of dealing with these issues, that we're not dealing with it in isolation. When we find an issue that is hurting our community, and its various components, we're going to address it. So we're looking to do at least 100 surveys in the Somalian community to get that information back to you and to people in your community for you to be able to have some data around how this issue is impacting you. So I think that that's one of the things I want to be really clear about our work with Hawthorne, is that we're not being selfish. We want to make sure that our community knows that we care about you as well as we care about our, African American, Somalian, Latino. We care about everybody. But there are just times where we have to do things very, very componently and compartmentalized. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to invite you today. So thank you. That's not my report.
Thank you, Clarence. Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Look forward to continued partnership with you along these critical issues. So that leads me to introducing our featured speaker today. And I'm glad to introduce a person that I know who I've worked with over with the Confederation of Somali Community over at the Brian Cole Center. And Brother Abdurrahman Mukhtar came to Minnesota when he was about to finish high school from Somalia first to California, then California up to Twin Cities, where he attended Roosevelt High School and University of Minnesota following that. And he was a leader in the Somali student organizations and managed youth programs at the Confederation of Somali Community in Minnesota, which is also at Brian Cole Center, and also for Hennepin County Libraries. He's able to talk to us about a variety of things, and we're going to let him just flow the way he wants to. We know our topic is how we deal with opioids, but nothing is ever alone. Everything is connected. That's the nature of the times we're in, the nature of culture, the nature of community. So we also appreciate and value the insight, Brother Mukhtar, that you can give us about how we can be effective neighbors, friends, and family with our Somali family. That's what we are. We're a family at the end of the day, and we have to look out for each other, protect each other, celebrate each other, and create together a community that really reflects the best of us and the best we can give to each other. So, you might want to talk about your story of growing up in Mogadishu, for example, or, how your family moved from there to Kenya. Your country is known by, and you've experienced the question of clan conflict. How does that play out in Minnesota? If it does, maybe it doesn't. The refugee situation, it's just fascinating that the community has survived so much and continues to rise and reflect resilience, power, and joy, right? And richness in the culture. And so I'll stop there and just turn the microphone over to you, and welcome, brother. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for all the work you do in community. Let me say one last thing that I love about interacting with the Somali community. They say the language and the culture mean that Somalis are all poets, that they are poetic in their approach to the universe and their expression of life, of both problems and problem solving, comes through and with a poetic expression that is nothing short of beautiful. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Brother Mukhtar.
Thank you all. It's an honor to be here with you all. Thank you, Diana, for inviting me this very important conversation. And I'm really happy to be here. What I will do is I will share. I know we have about an hour, and I want to make sure that I also allow you to ask any questions. But I created a PowerPoint to talk about, let me see, screen. Yeah, trying. Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Yeah. So again, my name is Abdurrahman Mukhtar. I live in the city of Minneapolis, City Riverside neighborhood, and I'm a father of 5, 4 boys and a daughter. And I came here because of the opportunities that we have here in Minnesota. My family fled the Somali Civil War. We end up in Kenyan refugee camps. The first refugee camp in Kenya that existed in the border of Somalia and Kenya, Liboya refugee camp. My family spent 7 years in different refugee camps in Kenya, and also in Nairobi. I end up coming to United States, San Diego, California. But right when I came to US, I found out because of my age, I can only stay in high school 1 year in San Diego, California. But I found out in Minnesota, I can stay in high school until I am 21. Unless I'm a troublemaker, unless I don't want to learn. And because of that extra 3 years, I moved to Minneapolis right away. And that's what attracts a lot of families, a lot of Somali families and immigrants to Minnesota because of the opportunities, whether it's education, employment, housing, health, whatever that may be. And every family, every parent want the best for their children. And that's one thing that we all have in common. Everyone wants to take care of their kids and young people. Everyone wants to give their kids an opportunity because of what I went through, because of the refugee camp, because of the civil war, what I experienced, the trauma, all of that. But I was still motivated to get an education and learn, and because I had that opportunity here. And because of that, I get involved in doing youth work. I was able to get involved in early on in high school student leadership. So I've done youth work. I currently work as a full-time with the Minneapolis Recreation and Minneapolis Backport Back and Rec. But I've been doing youth work since 2000. So 2018, when I left Blissberry United Communities to join the Backport, when I left the Brian Coyle Center running the after-school program, the youth program at Brian Coyle Center, since I live in the neighborhood, I also write and own, and I'm the founder of a bilingual Somali newspaper called Tusmo Times. So I received an email. From Minnesota Poison Control regarding young Somali male ending up in Hennepin County Medical Center, the ER, or young people ending up in Fairview Emergency or the ER. Those young people were using what we call K9 at that time. But also they were using a new synthetic drug that was synthetic marijuana, and they were ODing on that. Because of that, the number of young people ended up in the ER was really unspeakable, but the community did not know about this. No one knew about this new trend. And because of that, we also have young people who are dealing with substance abuse. Mainly, they were dealing with alcohol. And no one really, in my community at least, cared about young people who are dealing with substance abuse. They are right outside of our business doors. They are right outside in our neighborhood. No one was acknowledging them as our kids. No one was seeing them, people who are dealing with homelessness or dealing with addiction. We were stereotyping them. We had stigma because of our culture. And because of that, when I found out this was a new trend and young people were overdosing, and it was different than marijuana and alcohol, I went to a lot of meetings where we talk about gun violence and shootings, young people getting killed each other. And a lot of times we will ask politicians and other organizations to help our kids. But then I thought about myself, what am I doing to make a difference? What am I doing to, to reach out to young people, especially the ones who are dealing with substance abuse, the ones who are dealing with addiction, with mental illness, because you have to know that mental illness leads to all of these things. And that's when I started the Real Youth. So the word the Real means care in Somali language. So my wife donated the first $100 towards this. This is a volunteer-based initiative where I'm on the corner on the street every Friday, 8 to 10 in City Riverside, where young people hang out, especially giving out free pizza and tea. So the pizza and tea is to attract young people. And the tea, we add a lot of ginger in that tea. And the pizza helps them actually, if they eat something and they drink that tea, if they get any money, they don't eat any food. They're hungry all day. They will buy that money with alcohol, with drugs, with things. So I'm feeding them. That's prevention, at least allowing them to have a meal. But more than anything else, it's a human connection. I'm acknowledging them that, we still love you, we still care about you, you're still a human being, you're still our kid, you're still our youth. We love you, we may not acknowledge you. And there's a study that showed more than anything else, when people are dealing with homelessness or addiction problem, eye contact, people don't even look at homeless people and give them eye contact. That's how far we came. We stigmatize. We dehumanize people. And I wanted to simply say, we still love you. We care about you. We don't judge you. There's help, and we share resources with them. While we're out there, we also, if they overdose, we can give them, the help that they need, the Narcan. We could also call 911 for them. While we're doing that, we could also educate. And what I found out, interestingly, a lot of the elders will come and ask, what are we doing here? What is this program about? So this became a way to also educate our elders, our parents, and business owners about it takes a village to raise a child. It's a collective effort. We have to help our young people. So it started with, K2. I started with synthetic marijuana. And normally the drug of choice used to be marijuana and alcohol. And some of the older, young adults used to use the alcohol. Young people used to use the marijuana. So we knew what group of what young people were doing, what the drug of choice was. So while we were doing that, also the gun violence is taking place and is still continuing. And because of that, then we decided to also include for Hoya campaign. Hoya means mother or mom. So we find out that some of the young people who were standing on the corner were really afraid for their lives because other young people from other neighborhoods were coming to shoot them at the same time. So in order for them not to retaliate, in order for them to feel safe, we also started this campaign called For Hoya campaign, which means do it for Hoya. Every kid loves their mom, and mothers, all family grieve, but mothers grieve even more when their kids die. So this creativity of allowing to tackle not only drug addiction, not only mental illness, but also gun violence became an opportunity for us. But then all of a sudden, synthetic fentanyl started. And that's when we started. 2019 was really a bad year for my community. We lost so many young people. And there's always a stigma where people think only young people who are in the corner, who are in the streets are the ones who are doing drugs. But that's not the case. Young people who were in college, who graduated from college, who had jobs, who were doing well, were some of the people that died of fentanyl overdose. So we always think it's only young people who are involved in at-risk activities. That's not the case. And we also think about, we only think only boys are doing this, but that's not the case. We also have our females young women are also doing fentanyl in high numbers compared to boys. But community members are not aware of that. And because of that, we started this helping end addiction with love, heal. If you see the logo, I'll mention the Somali language and poet. If you see the logo, you have heal, but also you have heal with 2 I's and L. So heal is help end addiction with love, but the other heal is the Somali language and it means support. And that's what our youth need. They're crying for help. They need the support. They're dealing with mental illness, but also they're dealing with trauma. And to get that information out, is still the language. My community is an oral culture and it's a word of mouth. We share information through radio, through videos, but also I included the real radio show that once a week, every Sunday, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. We talk about youth issues, mental illness, and addiction, and other issues, education, health, whatever it might be. We bring young people to talk about their own issues. So if I get to the reality on the ground, like I mentioned, fentanyl is a monster in our community, and drug addiction is a problem in my community. For a long time, we have been denying that. We're not acknowledging that. Usually, we don't speak of this, or we speak it in privately. But because of the shame that we feel, especially our parents, many immigrant communities, including my community, we don't talk about 2 things. We don't talk about mental illness, and we don't talk about addiction or substance abuse. That led to, and because like I said, the choice of drug for young people used to be alcohol or marijuana. But then all of a sudden, that synthetic fentanyl came into hand, and that's what led to the death of so many young people. And when young people die, when they overdose and they die, that parents or community members will always find excuse. They will say, my child died of heart attack. They will still deny that their child died of overdose, because they don't want that stigma. They don't want that shame. And even though they're still grieving, they know the reality, but still. And the title I gave this to, a silence killer. For marijuana, you can smell. Alcohol, you can smell, and you can see someone is intoxicated. But for fentanyl, you can see that, you cannot tell that. Young people will come home, and sometimes what we found out, also people who are selling these drugs, young people will pay through Cash App, and they will deliver that to them at home. Without those young kids, living at home. So their parents think, my child is at home, he's not outside, he's not doing anything wrong. But they don't know that they'll go down, get that drug, and take it in the bathroom or in their bedroom. That's why a lot of the overdoses, you will find them at the bathroom or in their bed when they overdose. And parents are not aware of that. When parents try to wake them up, they will find, or someone else in the family will find that child or that young person dying. So because of the high number of deaths due to fentanyl overdose and substance abuse and drugs, at least my community is paying attention. We're having a conversation about drugs, but also young people are breaking the silence of addiction. Young people who went through this, who overdosed, but luckily did not die, are speaking about this now. These are group of young people who recovered from addiction. They created a group called Generation Next, and they create awareness. They talk about their struggle with addiction. They talk about how many times they overdose. They talk about what led to them, to do drugs. And Abdurrahman Warsame, for example, said when he was, I spoke with him, and when he was speaking about fentanyl, he said fentanyl is a monster that has been raging in our community and young people. Ghalid Ibrahim said, he started taking drugs slowly, but he became addicted, and he started with marijuana, but all of a sudden he OD'd more than 3 times. Luckily, he did not die. So there's so many cases where now parents, we react when someone dies. When in some weeks, some days, we will have 2, 3, or 4 young people die in overdose. And when we find that out, my community will host meetings and gatherings to talk about this, reacting to that death, but we don't have a consistent way of continuing with that awareness and education. And that education is not only for young people. You have to educate parents. You have to educate faith-based organizations, faith leaders, community leaders. When they are aware of the situation, when they are aware of what is happening, the reality on the ground, then they can advocate very well for the rest of the community. But also, that guilt and shame plays a huge role. Parents will tell their kids not to talk about this or look for help because they don't want other community members, their neighbors, to talk about their child or their family. And when you think about the fact that we know addiction is real, and the fact that we know, depression and mental illness also is what is leading to this. Some of the young people will always tell me because they witness a friend getting killed right next to them. When you experience that, they find out ways to numb that pain. Adults are struggling to talk about the trauma, imagine young people. And when you add that to COVID-19 and that isolation and not going to school, not going to the rec center to play with your friends, not doing recreation, that leads to also more isolation and more problems. So according to Minneapolis Health Department, from 2019, the city of Minneapolis had 88 overdose deaths. Last year, we had 146. And with that number, also in my community, I believe it's even higher. We don't talk about that. We don't count. We don't include that data. Sometimes when the city is tracking that data, it includes, they don't separate the data from Somalis, Oromo, or Ethiopians, or East Africans. That data is, combined. So they don't exactly know how many Somali youth who died overdose. But in our community, gun violence used to be, homicide used to be number 1 death for young people, number 1 cause of death. Opioid and fentanyl is the leading cause of death for young people in my community now. So I don't want to continue. I will send the PowerPoint to Diana, but I want to make sure we have time for questions. But what I will have to say is that reaching out to young people and really giving them an opportunity to find out this resource available to them goes a long way. Those 2 young men that you see in that picture, I met them through my street outreach program, the Real Street Outreach on Fridays. they're dealing with substance abuse. There's so many problems, but we get connected right away because of the relationship that I have created. I was able to connect to a mentor in City Riverside who taught them art. I found out they love art, and I was able to find small money to pay them and the artists to teach them how they can weld and start creating art. And what led to that is really that beautiful art. They were able to create that, and because of that, they were able to look for help. So they went into rehab, so they can get the support that they need. So everyone needs someone to believe in them. Everyone needs someone who can help them without touching them. Someone who can give them help. Someone who can tell them that you can still do it. You know, there are resources available to you, but if you're ready, if you want to get the help you need, we can help you, but you have to allow yourself to want that help. And the possibility is that if you reach out to our young people, if we give them opportunity, if we educate them, if we are out there with them and see their struggle, they're willing to change. The reason they are shooting each other every day, they are crying for help. The reason they are doing drugs is that they want to numb that pain, whatever they're dealing with. Because, and we have to do something about this. We cannot be silent, and we cannot just watch and bury our kids every day. So thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. That was excellent. Thank you so much. Let's take time for questions. Anybody with a question? Just say your name first and raise your question or your comment. Go ahead, Clarence.
Yeah. First of all, let me thank you. I thought that was an excellent presentation, and it really was informative, and it really provided us some information. I think I wanted to ask this particular question: how can we help? I mean, that's one of the things that I think is most important. Is that, you know, I said a little bit earlier, is that we are concerned. So the question then for you is, how can we respectfully help you with this project?
I think. Thank you.
I think, like you can take the video down, Brother Mukhtar.
Yeah, let me. How do
Mahat Sanid, thank you.
Yeah, Mahat Sanid, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Stop share. Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you. So, Clarence, like you said, actually the survey that you are doing is a great way to help, so we can find out exactly what the issue is. We can have a data. Like I said, the city don't segregate this data, and I lost count of how many young people dying. So we don't have a real number of how many young people who are dying overdose. But also, my source is that I talk to young people because I'm very fortunate. I have done youth work and
Sure.
know a lot of the youth. So I'm not afraid to ask them, and you know, because of the relationship that I have, that trust, I ask questions, and they'll tell me what they need help with. But I think that trauma and recognizing mental illness and denying that, the shame that comes with that, is a huge problem for my community and for people of color in general. And I think whatever, based it on the experience that you have, the survey could be the first step. The training, the Narcan training, and the Narcan education could be one of that. This kind of conversation of networking and connection, this meeting, is also a huge help. So those are things that, but I could also share more information with Diana, other ways you can help. But the survey will be really helpful.
Well, I thank you for that, and I'm not going to speak for Anybody else? I'm just saying that Diana will speak for Human, but we stand ready to work with you. I mean, we will definitely work with you from the Human Partnership.
Thank you.
Kirsten, go ahead.
Me?
Yes. Did you have a question?
I did not. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
there's a hand up on your. Oh, it's my screen. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I thought you had a question.
great presentation, though. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are those gentlemen on your display, are those success stories or are those
Those
individuals
are success stories.
Those are success stories?
Yeah, those are young people who dealt with addiction, who struggled with gun violence, but they were able to beat that and come back and really educate the community and break the silence. And it really is an amazing when you see that, because of they've seen so many of their friends dying every day. They decided to be, and I'm really proud of them just to see that at least our elders and our parents want to hide everything because of the shame, the silence. But young people were like, no, we are dying every day. We need help and we have problems. We are all human beings. We in our culture, in our Muslim culture, you're not allowed to drink, let alone do drugs. So when you already know that, and the first school we send to our kids is not preschool or it's not even childcare. We send our kids to Islamic school. That's the first school we send them every Saturday and Sunday. So these are young people who really know their religion and have been lectured about things that they are not allowed to do. But the reality is that we also have parents who are abusing prescription drugs, but they don't talk about that. And we do have a lot of adults in my community that are really, they abuse prescription drugs or pills, but we don't talk about that. So young people took a matter to their hand and they broke that silence, and that is really helpful. A lot of young people come out. We have people who are creating programs that can culturally help young people and adults in my community now.
Okay, what do you do? It's been my experience. I heard you mention trauma and shame and mental illness. It's been my experience that a lot of the mental illness sometimes stems from the drug use.
Yeah.
And even though they are very much aware of the danger, like with the fentanyl, that it's killing you, they still choose to stay out on the street. They're homeless because they choose to use drugs. So I don't have to pay rent. So I'd rather be homeless because then I don't have to pay rent. I don't have no bills and I can use all my money to buy drugs. And I mean, what do you do when you run into that? And then it causes this shame or this trauma in their life because they put themselves in position to, you're out there on the street, you put yourself right out there in the danger of getting robbed or women or getting raped or gun violence or any of all this other stuff that they experience because they're not at home or in a home in a safe environment. And how do you get that across to them? Well, it's obvious that you've had some success stories. That's why that was my first question, because I mean, I want to know what's working for you, because we have that same issue in the African American community. And if I'm willing to try whatever you're trying that's working, because we have our young people out here and they're got the gun thing going on and the, what is it, WED or K2 or K9 or whatever, all this other stuff that, I'm recognizing because I hear it, and then I'm hearing you say the same thing. Yeah. And so it's not, we're dealing with the same issues, it seems like. So what's working for you? Because I want to
So
Help us help
you
each
know,
other.
unfortunately, with addiction, you will always have people who will go through treatment and they will get the help that they need, and you know they will recover. But you also have people who will continue to do that. One example of that is that through my daily job, the Real Youth is a volunteer effort that I do. That's you know, one way that I'm giving back to my community. But through my work, I see adults, you know, people that I went to school with, my classmates in high school, who are dealing with addiction, who are on the streets. You know, I'm being called to help with that through my work, and I know them, and these are, I mean, very bright people, but because of that addiction, now they are homeless and they still dealing with that. So with my work, I really focus on that human connection and that relationship, and especially acknowledging who they are, because I know who they are. I used to work with them, so I will talk about if they used to be in my soccer team. I'll talk about those good old days, you know, those memories. You know, I'll talk about things that they can remember and say, wow, you know, I really miss those days, those friends. And when you do that, when you humanize someone and you do that consistently, and at the end of the day, then they get hope, and you can say, you know, here are the resources. If you want to get help, there's help for you, and I'm willing to take you there. I'm willing to connect you with someone who can help you. And what I also do is just bring those resources where young people are. So you don't have to take them, or you don't have to say here the phone number. No, so I bring those resources to them so they can access that.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that I do. But the most important thing is really acknowledgement as a human being and that human connection, and continuing with that relationship.
That really makes a big difference, that connection, that I see you. You're not invisible. We see you.
Yes.
And we're here. We're here to help. That makes a big difference.
I
Okay,
have a
thank
question.
you.
I have a question. What programs, when the kids want treatment, are you using that's going to help them to be successful? And what support system after they've gone to treatment that's out there for them?
So right now we have one culturally appropriate treatment location. A community member found that wellness center, but also we have the People Center Clinic in Cedar Riverside, and Preview Clinic are also willing to help with this because of the high need in the community. But the challenge is really, after they come out, they don't have the support that they need, and a lot of them are relapsing because again, parents and community members, we are not ready to welcome them. We don't know how we can help them. And what I also found out, really, the elephant in the room is that a lot of the families live in affordable housing, or sometimes Section 8 housing. So when the youth get into trouble in the legal system, their family have to kick that young person from, if they're young adults, from that house, or the whole family have to leave that building. And that is creating parents choosing to stay in the affordable housing where they can afford the rent over their child. And that young man or woman then will end up sleeping with another family member, with a friend, or sneak to the house at night, late at night. But I found out that is affecting more than any other thing. Really, what causing a lot of young people to be homeless or to be outside is those landlords who are not allowing young people who have record in their rent history. They're not allowing to stay with their parents because of federal, whatever it may be. that those policies have to change, and people have to advocate for that. That's what I'm finding out.
Any other questions?
This is Mary Whitney.
Mhm.
And just listening to you, Han, I appreciate your openness, your honesty. And as one who worked at a alternative high school for over 12 years, so much truth in all that you're saying. And there are not appropriate housing programs for them. And having your son or daughter pushed out of housing because you're in a supported program or in public housing, even once incarcerated, you can't come back into the housing your parents have because of the addiction or the drug use. So in my heart of hearts, it's because systemically, the systems are set in place to hinder rather than draw in. And so even if they're on welfare, if they get a job that's minimum wage, and then their food stamps are cut off, or something's cut off, or their medical assistance is cut off. How can we not allow them to stabilize and save a few checks before cutting them off of resources? Because why work at minimum wage when you know what you're getting from the state is adequate to what you're making minimally? So systemically, we as a community, as a world, need to change the barriers that are put up for those exiting correction and re-entering back into society, and the shame and the pain that these communities are feeling. If you don't have a job, you don't have housing, how can you heal? And so I appreciate the openness. We have to do something differently, and we can't continue doing the same things that are not working. We know it's not working. And so it's up to us as a community to come together. As BIPOC people, we must work together and not against one another. And it's not saying nothing against white communities. I am not. We're saying all of us, white, Black, BIPOC, all of us have to work together instead of working against one another and shaming to say that all things Black is bad or wrong. It's not true. We want the same thing as other people in communities, to have a healthy community and do all we can to keep all of us healthy and not work against one another, but to come together and be for one another. That will be the difference. And I thank you for the honesty, the openness, and truth is what sets us free. And until we can be as honest and open as you've been here today, nothing will ever change. We have the power to change this if we come together. But thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be a soapbox, but we have to be different systemically. On purpose.
I wanted to comment on what you're saying. I absolutely agree. I became aware of that a long time ago, and I said how, and it's not just for individuals who are coming out of some kind of transition from addiction or whatever. It's for anyone who's trying to get ahead. Just like you said, if you have children in your home, when they grow up and they get a job, instead of the county allowing you to save up or grow from that point, they cut your services or your medical or whatever in some shape or form, which keeps you in a place of poverty. I hate to say it, but it keeps you in a place of poverty. And I said, how can they not see that? How can you not see that if I get a job, now I lose my daycare that you were giving me to go look for work. Now I got to pay for daycare, well, there goes half my check or whatever. And now I don't get the food stamps because my income is this, so there goes that. And I'm like, how do you get ahead in a system like that? I noticed that many years ago, and I said, this doesn't work. So I totally agree. We got to do something.
And then also part of the challenge is that when you have parents who sometimes cannot speak the language, who cannot read and write, even the native language, and looking for help for their child who is dealing with addiction. It's not an easy thing to do that. And when you add that to that cultural shame and the silence, when you add to that stigma of but also even within the system itself, accessing help and rehab if you're dealing with opioid is different for young people or families of color comparing to families who live in the suburban. If you see the media, how they talk about fentanyl death, it's affecting everyone. It's affecting every life, every color, every ethnicity. But in the news, when you watch, you will not understand that. You don't think people of color, immigrants, young people are dealing with that. You'll only think, especially male who live in the suburbs are the ones who are dealing with that, and that's not the truth. And what is also killing our young people are the synthetic drugs. These are not the prescriptions. You don't know these synthetic drugs, what is included in that drug. And that's why in 1 week, you may have multiple deaths. In another week, you may have a couple of overdoses, but they may not die because of what is in that drug. Also, like I mentioned, it's not only males or boys only doing this, our girls are doing this, but because of the scarf, because of the hijab, the veil they wear, and because how much we protect our girls, we are in denial. We don't talk about that. We don't think girls are doing this, but we have so many girls who are also dealing with addiction, and so it's a huge problem, to be honest with you. When you add that to the isolation and COVID-19, go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to ask a question since you're talking about the girls. Is the rate still kind of high in this area as well? Because I know there's a lot of females that are molested in the Somali community.
Yeah, and that's something that is part of that silence, the topic of that shame, that silence. So as a community, we have our problems. No community is perfect. And even though we've been here almost 30 years, we're still new kids on the block because we have new families who are coming in. And even in the north side now, because of the lack of affordable housing, you have a lot of East African Somali families who are moving into the north. Usually used to be over the south area, see the riverside, see what neighborhood, Elliott, Whittier neighborhood, but that's changing now. You have a lot of families in Eden Prairie, in the suburban, Edina, Plain. We are all over the place, and so whatever affects those families, because we are very family-oriented, connected community, we find out all those problems. A lot of the young people who commit crimes or who are involved in at-risk activities are coming from outside of Minneapolis, because at some point they grew up in Minneapolis, and this is where their friends are. This is where they feel comfortable, so they come back to that. So, having said that, like I said, this is a new phenomenon. This is really an issue, addiction, especially the fentanyl overdose. It's a huge problem in my community, the same way as many other community members. And this affects everyone because the stigma used to be people were only thinking young people who are dealing with gang activities or violence or who are on the street were involved in drugs. That's not the case. Young people who are educated, who have even some who have families, are dealing with this addiction crisis.
Let me
I have
ask.
one more question for you.
Go ahead.
what are, or well, do you deal with the prostitution or that comes from, you know, drug use, and not just with the girls, with the boys and you know, out there, because I frequent, what is it, South Minneapolis, up like on Franklin, or is that Chicago or Franklin? And I see a lot of that, and I see more young men out there trying to catch than I do women. And I'm like, does anybody see this? I mean, because I definitely see it, and I know it's drug related because you can look at them. And
That's not it's not a topic that we talk about. I know at one point, there was a long time ago, there was a case, well, that was a national case, dealing with, sex trafficking of girls. But that's not something, sometimes I'm afraid when girls run away, and they end up, staying with a boyfriend or whoever. I mean, that may be the case. There's some cases, but I'm not aware of any cases dealing with prostitution now. But I know at one point we had a big national case that was involved in sex trafficking and in Somali girls at one point. But I'm not aware of any of that now. I see a lot of the adults who are dealing with addiction on Franklin and Chicago, like you said, and other places. Sometimes I'll see females as well, but they're not as high as the male adults who are dealing with addiction, and mainly they're dealing with alcohol. But to answer your question, I'm not aware of that. Honestly, I cannot give you yes or no answer.
Brother Abdi, let me ask you, would the Somali organizations or families interact with or use resources in the African American community like Turning Point? What's the attitude towards resources like Turning Point, like the Urban League, like Phyllis Wheatley Community Center? I know that there is an effective engagement at North Point Health and Wellness, but the social service agencies like Hallie Q. Brown and St. Paul, does the community engage those, or is the community focused on simply what it explores and experiences with, say, like at Brian Coyle? What's your thought?
Yeah, so at this point, we are really in crisis, and the community really will use any resource that can help them. But sometimes it has to be culturally appropriate. And what I mean culturally appropriate is that if one person goes through that resource and they talk about their experience in that resource, then it's easier for other community members to use the resource. Mm-hmm. A lot of times information is powerful in this country, and if you don't know what you don't know. So a lot of times my community is not aware of this resource. And so if you can find a way to do that, I'm in the planning of doing a youth summit and to focus on this specific topic, addiction and also mental illness. So my goal is also to have resources at youth summit where families and parents can access. So I'll be more than happy to talk to you because I'm not aware of some of the resources that you mentioned now. I myself don't know them. But if I know them, when parents call me, when community members call me, then I can share the resources with them. I can say, look, these are other options, other places that you can go. But definitely, if you know these are resources that are available for them, then we can share that information with them, and they'll definitely use those resources.
Early on, some of the elders in the community were wary about interaction between young Somali community members and young African Americans. There was a period of time when there was an elevated sense of conflict, particularly at your school at Roosevelt.
Yes.
Some famous food fights.
I experienced that. I was there.
You were there. They got blown out of hand, and they wanted to act like it was World War IV, right? Because these teenagers were throwing food at each other. And so the difference between this black and that black, this black being Somali, this black being Minnesotan or from Kansas City, both black, but that difference was escalated, elevated with the, I think, outcome or maybe the intent of keeping communities separated.
Am I muted now?
I was in a, beg your pardon? I was in a meeting earlier where someone said that they thought if Somali kids were playing basketball, they were more likely to be influenced negatively if they were playing with black kids rather than playing soccer. The thought being that soccer is where white people are and not black people. So what is that? Is that feeling still in the community, or have we moved past that? Part of that, I believe, is the elders trying to hold on to, the glue of culture and expectation. But you've described that even though these cultural frameworks exist, the young people, this is all young people, are saying they want to see the world themselves, and assemble the world through their own even lack of experience, and often at great cost by ignoring the elders. So what's your thought on that? And we only have about 5 minutes before we can finish up.
So that's a really great question. And the first, I was one of the students. I was in high school at that time at Roosevelt High School when we had those fights with our brothers from the African American community. But just to answer your question, this is what I tell parents and community members in my community and everyone, that Somali youth, like I said, I have 5 kids. My oldest 17, he graduated from high school this summer. He have never seen Somalia. So he's an American, but as a parents are telling our young people that they are not Somali enough because they were born in America, because they speak English. We are telling them you're not Somali enough. Our African American brothers, sometimes young people, will tell Somali kids that you're not black enough. So the American mainstream is telling our young people that you're not American enough, you're not an American. So their identity also is Islam. Our faith leaders are telling them you are not a true Muslim. So these kids have identity crisis. They're really confused because we as elders are not accepting our youth as Somali Americans or Somali enough. But the community that they have the most common, the community that they relate to the most is the African American community. Because of the experience of my son and myself is totally 2 different things. Our youth listen to hip hop. If you ask them today, they'll tell you they either want to play basketball or professional football, not soccer. They rather eat fast food and then goat meat or Somali food. So they have a lot in common with African American youth, and in terms of culture, and that's how they identify. Even the way they dress, even the way their hairstyle is that. But it's us adults and elders who are not allowing our kids, who are not telling. We are telling them you're not Somali enough. The mainstream culture is telling them you're not American enough. And sometimes
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you break. We've had enough of all the money you make. We've had enough, no more life at stake. We've had enough, this is a proclamation. It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait. Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll.
Would like to donate, we were collecting until July 31st, and you can leave all the materials on the porch of the Hawthorne office at 2944 Emerson Avenue North. And I think that's all I.
Abdirahman Mukhtar, thank you so much for your presentation. And we look forward to this being one of the tools we use to strengthen our connections and our ability to support